So now it's Géraldine's turn. Géraldine Vandevenne, who is manager of Equibitfit, president of IF3E, which is Training Center for Bit, Bridle and Saddle Fitters. She's the founder of AIBFF, Association Internationale Bit Fitting from France. And she will present the presentation, Let's Take a Closer Look at the Actions of the Bits and the Tightening of the Nosebands. And Géraldine comes from Belgium. Thank you very much, Géraldine.
Thank you, everyone, to be there. It were already great presentations, so I'm a little bit stressed now. I had to make... Yes, but I had to make a short presentation, so I will be really quickly. I will speak a little bit about the bits and the different kinds of mouthpieces. If we have a look about the different kinds of mouthpieces, they have almost different effects in the mouth of the horses. Also the most common used bits, so we will have a closer look at it. They give also different pressure points in the mouth on different parts of the mouth. There are also different kinds of rings, but for me it's the secondary part. The first part is really the mouthpiece. It's really the parts of the bit lying in the mouth of the horse. And there are also different pressure points on the head of the horse. And this includes the action of the bridle and most of all of the headpiece of the bridle. This is a really, really important point, and most of the time we didn't give or pay attention to the headpiece. So we have single jointed bit, and I know also a lot of bit fitters and trainers don't like single jointed bit because they say, yes, it will huge and give pressure on the palate of the horse, but that's not true for a lot of kinds of this bits model. So we will have a closer look. So I have a lot of skulls at home, horse skulls, and this is one of dressage horse who passed away. He was euthanized at a young life, and it had to be ridden in a dressage competition. So if you have a closer look for people really used to dentistry, we see here something of when they removed wolf tooth, but it's not complete, and at the other side he still had a wolf's tooth, and it was ridden with a bit. And also we see really poor dentistry. But it was a ridden horse, so it was followed and with a lot of therapists, and still we find horses with this kind of mouth. So if we put a bit inside, they will have much more injuries, of risk of injuries or pain in the mouth, but also due to the noseband, because it will give more pressure on the side and also on the cheeks of the horses. So it will be, really painful for the horse. So the first single jointed bit is a bit with tongue relief. So you'll see a little passage for the tongue, and it's possible for the horse to have less pressure on the tongue with this kind of bits. But like I told to my students, when we remove pressure on one point, we give more pressure on the other place, so most of the time at the side of the bars. But a lot of horses at the moment likes bits with tongue relief. And this is also due because we have also physical points behind the tongue of the horses with the hyoid and the rest of the body. So we have also a lot of horses, like we told before, with stress, stomach problems, and they are really sensitive on the tongue. So it's now really common to use this bit, but when we have an action on the rein, so effect an action in hyperflexion, we see also already that this kind of bits can have pressure point or give pressure point to the pallets of the horse. Here it's another single jointed bit with more, sorry, I didn't move it. It's not working. Yes, thank you. So a single jointed bit with more symmetry. Like you maybe already looked at single jointed bit, there are a lot with asymmetric parts. One part is shorter as the other one. This is a model with more symmetry, also round bits. So we have another action in the mouth of the horse, and I can tell you it's more sweet in or less painful. This is also a model with a curve. It's frequently used in dressage. So we see also we have one pressure point on the tongue of the horse. It will have also biomechanics issues to the rest of the body of the horse. Then we have a model with a flat part. And if you see also the different kinds of mouthpiece, we have round one, we have some one are more flats. They will give another action in the horse mouth. And even worse, when we have a strong action on the reins. And also, they have another position and another influence in the horse mouth and other pressure points in function of the head position. So it's really important when we choose a bit to look how the horse is training and if and all are the action of the hands of the rider. And like in a further presentation, some horses will put themselves in an hyperflexion to be not confronted with the action of the bit, or they will look and are really instable on the hand, but also standing because of the actions of these kinds of different kinds of bits. So for double jointed, we have some kinds of particular models, and also really important, the different kinds of central pieces, lozenge. In function of this one, you can have more or less action on the tongue of the horse and even to the palate. So one used also now for the moment really successful with horses is also one with tongue relief, because if you see here are the reins really straight, they still remain a little bit place for the tongue. We have no tongue here, no mucosa, but they still stay a little bit place for the tongue. If we will have a look at other models, and you will see with different kinds of lozenge bits, here are common double jointed bit. You see there is here more pressure on the tongue, and here too. And also this part is giving more pressure on the bars of the horse. So also from study on the skulls and on still living horses, we see a lot of periostitis on the bars. Normally, the bit has not to lie on the bars or put pressure on the bars, but it's only because the horse is removing his tongue to the back of his throat to avoid the pressure points of the bit. Then we have a lot of biomechanical problem also for breathing, and this is only when the horse is also avoiding the pressure points of the bits, and we see therefore much more injuries in the mouth, and it's the second part of the presentation tomorrow with this kind of bit. Then we have a model with a flat part. It's double jointed, so it's laying flat on the tongue and in the mouth of the horse. But it can cause a lot of injuries when poorly used. So if we have a rider pulling really hard on the reins. Like you see here, we have much more injuries also on the lips, the mucosa, and on the bar with these kinds of bits. Then we have locked models. And when we use locked models, we have pressure on all the tongue, but less pressure on the bars. And it could be appreciated from some kinds of horses. We have already injuries on the bars. And also, when we have injuries on the bar, we find most of the time also damage on the TMG. So it's also most appropriate for the horses to use this kind of bits. So I would speak also about Weymouth bits, and we have a lot of different kinds of bits. And I choose pictures of this one because it was a question of Eva. There was one post on social media from a bit lying like it was turned in the mouth with loose reins. And this is kinds of bits. So this is the right side of the position of the bit in the mouth. It's not good lying, but it is this model. We have 45 degrees to the back. And this bit can only lie in a good way or properly way in the horse's mouth when you have huge contact on the reins. Yes, it will work. So this is Weymouth with a little port. Like you see, we will have, it's also common bit, for a lot of horses with small mouths, we have more pressure point on the bars. And there is no place enough to let the tongue under the bit. So most of the horses with this kind of bits, they're pulling their tongue to the throat, and the bit will really lie on the bars. So we have these other models like round bit, really well-known lot model of Weymouth, and you see they are round. So even if we have a lot of pressure, they turn in the mouth. So they have another action. And also with these kinds of bit, we have different degrees. They can be at 90 degrees, but 45 degrees forwards, 45 degrees afterwards. And then we have Weymouth bit with tongue relief. There is much more place for the tongue to lay under the bit. And this can be also much more appreciated for horses with tongue sensibility. So the different pressure points in the bones are for sure on the tongue, and this is the first one. And this is really important to take care about the tongue of the horse. Then we have on the bars, most of the time on the lower bars, but also at the upper bars. And this is when we use huge bits and also with a really tight noseband. On the lips, of course, and on the palate. So most of the time, the most frequent used rings are the loose rings or egg butt or D-ring, sure for dressage. Universal or Peshwa are almost for jumping horses, and Weymouth for dressage horse or Pelham for jumping horse. So we have, with chains bits, a lot of effects also on the chin, and we are closing the mouth. So we enforce the action of the mouthpiece in the mouth. So in this time, we have also an action on the cheeks of the horse, on the chins for the bits with chain, and it's also really important to take a protection for the chain because we have a lot of nerves passing there. On the poll, and this is really important to take care about the poll of the horse, like we saw already, and on the lips. So I have a little video, a little film. It's for my own horse, and it's with a normal bit. double jointed, and I was putting him in hyperflexion. He's not used to be and to do it, but you can have a closer look to the action then of the bit on the tongue, and you see he's not happy, and on the lips too. So it's just when we have more pressure and put the horse in hyperflexion. So I prefer to do it like this with my own horse than with another horse. And you will see the horse will be lying quiet when we have less pressure and pulling his head on a normal posture. So, about the nosebands, the function normally of the noseband is to remain the bridle on a good position on the head of the horse. And the function of the noseband can be really different in function of the kind of noseband we use. And it can be also more severe, and also when we have poor bridle fitting. We have pressure extra on the lips, especially with flash noseband on drop noseband, because we pull the bit near to the lips of the horse, and we also reinforce the pressure from the bit in the mouth of the horse. We can also have extra pressure on the cheeks. We think about poor dentistry. Extra pressure on the nose and the nostrils, especially where the noseband is not adjusted properly. You will see in a further picture, you see the noseband is really low, really too low, and it's put a lot of pressure on the nose. So your horse cannot breathe. We put bits, we have some kinds of horse putting the tongue afterwards, so for breathing is really bad, and then we tie the noseband, they can't breathe at all. So we have also extra pressure on the mandibula, the lower jaw, and giving extra pressure on the TMG. So it's also important because we reduce the movements of the horse when moving. And it cannot swallowing, and the link between, because there are a lot of studies about pressure, problems with tightening the noseband, but less of the time there are not studies the pressure on the pole. This is really my thing I'm really busy with. All the pressure on the pole I do test with these pressure maps. And when we have poor bridle fitting, poor use of the noseband, and tightening the noseband, we have huge pressure on the headpiece and on the pole of the horse. So it increases the pain for the horse. So more severe if poor quality of bridle, more severe in function of the material used, more severe in function of the poor fitting. So we will have a look to this one, and if you see this picture, you see the cracked noseband, and you see it's really too low. So we have also another position of the bit of the mouth because the rings are pulled out. You see it's really tight and reinforced with pads, and the pads are not properly used in this case. Normally it's to have less pressure, and this way we have more pressure. So also we have more pressure here on the jaws, because normally the properly used about the crank noseband is to have a relief in the jaws, and not to have pressure on the jaws and putting the pressure on the jaws and on the tooth of the horse. So here you increase the pressure. So when we see a horse like this, we can directly say it's poor bridle fitting. So the horse is in pain with or without rein action. In the other picture, you see a double noseband. So the mouth is shut, also the nostrils, I cannot breathe. And we see here due also to lack bridle, extra pressure here on the neck, on the pole. So you see everything is tight near the ears of the horse. And yes, if you see the pain, the signs of pain, it's clear, I think. So when we have an action and we do bridle fitting, you have to take care about, yes, the flash noseband pulling here. Also on this picture is picture for demonstration. But here also you can see it's for bridle fitting. Why? Because we are really tight, flash noseband, putting the bit near the lips. Also here, we have a lot of pressure on the pole here, because everything is tightened, and we have here a lot of pressure. So even if we have a look on social media, we can find a lot of horses with poor situations. So when we are tightening of the noseband, we have an influence of the TMG. Also, from pulling everything, tying everything, we pull more the headpiece, like on this picture. Yes. No? Okay. The breathing of the horse, the movement of the horse, the action of the bit, and the pole and the first cervical. So the noseband has to be properly adjusted. Bad fitted material can cause injuries, stress, poor biomechanics. And to tie the noseband will not help the horse or solve the problems like opening the mouth or pulling the tongue out. And this is the most answers I have from riders why they're tightening the noseband, and I think we have a lot of education also to do to the riders. And it's because the horse is opening his mouth, is putting the tongue outside, and so on and so on. And they are absolutely not good answers. So a lot of horses, professionals, needs also more education about bits and bridles, because I'm also sometimes following on social media, and they are also speaking about the hands of the riders, but I speak a lot about the tack. The tack has to be already fitted, and then we can speak about the hand of the riders. About also correct biomechanics of the horses, there were a lot of conversation here, because the horse is not using his back, the hind legs also, but I see it all days in my practice, and there are also a lot due or bad pressure from the tack. Recognizing signs of pain or discomfort by the horse is also something not used by riders. They don't understand it, they don't know it. And I think it's also our task as professionals to explain to the riders why it's good or not good, and on a good manner they accept it. It was also a question just before. So I think we have to work all together for more horse welfare and a good equitation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Géraldine. So now we'll have 30 minutes for questions and answers. So has anyone has a question? Yeah, Fenna Westerdun from the Dutch Federation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Géraldine, for your talk. Very interesting. Well, as a Dutch Federation, of course, we're always busy with tech and trying to do the best for the horse, but it's so hard that we don't have much evidence. Can you help me with evidence that the bit is good in that way or bad in that way? Or because they say, well, I'm doing it right, I'm having a soft hand, and then we say, okay, we're trying to throw all the bits out and start with only one bit, but we don't know if that bit is the right bit.
Yes, it's really difficult because it's nothing white or black with horses and also with bits. So also when teaching, say, no, we have no one bit is good and the other one is bad. Sometimes, well, some models. But when you have a simple single joint and a double jointed bit, it's really difficult. But we know also where they putting more pressure and they have an evidence on the horse's biomechanics. I tried also bits on a dead horse, just lay down for dissection, and we tried with different kind of bits. So the horse is dead, and just have a movement from the hind legs. And in function of the kind of bit we used with the same pressure, using pressure pads, we see a different movement. So it's also owned to each horse, and that's make it difficult. I think the best bit is a bit we will not hurt to the horse, but you see it immediately because the horse is calm, no signs of pain, have a good biomechanic, and we see also the results because yes, I have also horses doing competition, but we see the results, and it's really important. So we can stay and ride horses with bit or bitless bridles. It's pretty much the same, but we have to pay attention, and there is no black or white. This make really difficult.
And you say we have bits that are really not good?
Yes.
Is there evidence from? Because then in dressage, there are not much bits allowed.
Yes, no.
But in the show jumping, of course, well,
yes.
In the FEI rules, it's terrible. And we already in the Dutch Federation said we need scientific evidence that the bit is good for the horse. And there's no evidence. So for 2 years now, our discipline specialists have some quietness in new asking for the bit for in the rules. But well, it's hard.
Yes, it's really hard. But some models, sometimes I do huge A's and say, you are not putting this in the horse mouth, you know. Yes, there are some models more with jumping horses, Western horses for sure, than with a dressage horse.
Maybe I'll come back to you later.
Okay. And but with dressage horses, we have also problems because they use a lot of old-fashioned bits, and that's a big problem for now because we see more and more from our new breeds a horse. They have small mouths, really sensitive, small, not so much place. And we were used to use thick bits, taking a lot of space. And yes, that's not probably good fitted, and it's causing pain to the horse. Yes, that's the most common problem, actually. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you. It's not black and white. It's very difficult. I know this problem because my professional activity is equine dentistry and vet, and I teach with my famous colleague, Dr. Schwitt. I teach for more 800 vets in France and other. I think to try to improve the race of standard bred, make a collective, a professional collective. And when we don't know white and black, good, not good, it's necessary to make many professionals around the table and to do, in science, we say conference of consensus. And he said, today, the professionals say, it's good, it's not good, and it's a better way to improve our method.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I see also as a bit and bridle fitter, they have bit I used 10 years ago, I don't use anymore because the horse is changing now, also technique for riding. But also I have the response from my riders and also from vets, dentists and so on. And they are really looking, there are no injuries in the mouth. And for me, it's really good if they don't see any injuries with a good or bad rider, hair level, low level. So yes, there are bits we can say, or we can put in classes that can say, yes, this can be used also with poor rider, and this is too dangerous or too sensible and only in the hands of really specialists of professional riders. And what's professional, it's in function of the hand. It's most of the time just this problem. Yeah.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. What do you think about rubber bits?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have a lot of kinds of synthetic bits. So the rubber, the black one, are not appropriate for the horses because they ram up, and so you can have some kinds of wounds, like it's burns. And then we have also other kinds of synthetic bits coming from the food industry. And also, it's not that this bit are the best of the world. So it's most of the time due to the shape. That's the first problem. And then are they hard or are they smooth, moving in the mouth, not moving in the mouth? It's the same with the question about the mirrored with leather bit. Is it a good or not good? I think it gives pressure on the tongue of the horse. Of some horses will like it and other horses not.
Okay, thank you.
Now, just a few quick remarks. As far as I remember, if you need more evidence on the effect of bits, look for the name of Preusshoff in the 90s. He tested the effect of different bits. The problem was that he tested the mouthpieces on real horses. So the pressure depended from the suppleness, the training of the horse. You should have tested on something hard, like a wooden head. But there are evidence to be found in the scientific literature. Look up for the name of Preusshoff. And he published in English and in German.
Okay. Thank you very much.
That's the problem now.
Yeah.
People are in German.
Okay, thank you.
And then another observation concerning the hypoxia. You remember maybe Cook, who worked on head shaking. And in the beginning of his career, he set up a list of 77 questions in order to make a differential diagnosis for the various reasons of head shaking. But later on, he became a bit more stricter and exclusive and said head shaking is mainly produced because of pole flexion. And he argued that the horses, when pole flexed, were in hypoxia. I was a bit skeptical, considering the experience of so many great masters. We never observed real problems when it was carried out correctly, and it's natural behavior of the horse. It belongs to the ethogram of the horse, pole flexion. Of course, they don't remain long in that position. Now, in 2007, I had a student who tested hypoxia in the experimental ponies we had at the faculty in Ghent. My colleagues from the internal medicine had ponies with displacement carotid. So we used the ponies to gradually train them to pole flexion with the Pessoa rein. And we put them on the trotting machine. And to make a long story short, various gas parameters were measured in arterial and venous blood. And there were individual differences between the ponies, 5 or 6 ponies, but we didn't find evidence of hypoxia. And my colleagues from the physiology told me the decrease in some ponies of oxygen in the blood was physiologically not significant. So probably, let's remain careful, probably that if pole flexion is obtained gradually, ideally speaking as a consequence of collection and not being forced with growing reins and so on as it happens nowadays, probably is not a problem, a welfare problem, if it's carried out correctly.
Yes, but then you are talking about a correct classical point pole flexion with the head not coming behind the vertical.
Yes,
just to make sure. Yeah, just to be clear. Thank you.
I mean, nothing to do with Rolku and other hyperflexions. And just we cared that the head position was at plus minus at 90 degrees. And we took 2-3 months to gradually accustom those ponies in that position. So that doesn't exclude that when even a correct pole flexion is carried out, obtained through coercion, then there might be problems. You cannot exclude that.
The difference would be that the muscles would be more contracted Is that possible? And then they contract around the pharynx, and then they
And
close down the
probably
diameter
great,
more than if the horse does it from itself, being quite relaxed.
That's a problem with the saliva glands.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I speak on behalf of my colleague Sonja Schütz, who doesn't feel competent enough to do that in English herself. I don't know if that's true, but she asked me to speak for her. So I have a question. We in Germany, we are from the Association of Recreational Riders, and a few years ago we created a position paper on different bridles, tack, nosebands and things. And we are very critical about the puller strap. So not the noseband itself, but I think pulling strap, is that the correct word in English? Yes. So what do you think about it? Because we sort of question it in general, because if you leave it, if you don't use it, problems might be more visible. That's what we think. And we don't really see the reason for it. So one of our colleagues in Germany, he's a collector on historical bits and bridles. He has a huge collection, and he's very interested in this tech topic. And he says in former times, puller straps were absolutely unknown. It's quite a new development or new invention. So I would be interested on your opinion on that topic.
Yes. So about the flash noseband. Normally, it has no use when you also have a properly fitted bit. So when it appears, it was to maintain the bit correctly in the horse's mouth. So we don't need it. So this was the reason first when it was used. So, but we don't need it when we have a properly fitted bit and fitted bridle. It has no use. So now most of the people used him just to shut down the mouth of the horse. This is the only way. But yes, if we have a look on old bridles and so on, there were no use about the flash noseband.
Thank you very much. The flash noseband seems to be the combination of French noseband and German noseband. Is that true? Because when I was really young, we only had German nosebands, so we didn't need the flash one because it was already there, and we didn't have the French one.
Yes, there are more combination now than the flash noseband. You have the anatomic one, the double noseband, or putting a little bit pressure, and they're much more like the, yes, in French we say also Mexicans noseband, so you know. But the flash is also no Mexicans, is also no combination between the drop noseband and the French noseband.
Okay, so we're talking about the bits that were allowed or not, and you just say noseband, a flash noseband is technically useless. So maybe to allow to see what bit is good for the horse or not, should we just say that nosebands are not allowed anymore in competition, and then maybe it'll be easier to see whether the horse is in pain or not?
For the kind of bits, you mean? The list is long.
Yeah, but I mean, if we remove the noseband, if no riders are allowed to ride with a noseband,
yes,
then we will see whether the horse can express pain or not easier, right? So would it be easier for the steward then to know whether the bit is right or not?
Yes. So, yes, that's about the flash noseband, but not the noseband. There is a difference between the flash noseband and the noseband. But yes, normally, if you have a properly tied noseband, yes, the horse can exteriorize what it's feeling. But normally, a horse with a good rider, no good, yes, not good, but good hands, properly fit bit and bridles, also with double bridles, so also with a snaffle and a Weymouth, they have a closed mouth. I have riders training high level, and the mouth is closed and it's not tight, so it can.
Yeah, so maybe we need
possible.
To work towards that.
Yes, it's possible. It's really, really possible. So and also to do a pirouette, it's possible. So it's not something, no, we are dreaming about it. It's really possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, Juliette.
For you, what is the goal of a noseband when it's not too tight?
The goal of a noseband, I think, when you have a jumping horse, it can I have also children doing with pony games. There are also competition. They are moving with the hand. Horseball also pulling on the reins. You know, you don't have only horses doing dressage or dressage with a quiet hand of head. And I think I prefer to see a horse happy without a bit pulling out his mouth because they are pulling on the reins. So I work a lot with a bridle, and my noseband are not tight. But you have a fixity. You have also some kinds of bridles where the bit is hanging on the noseband. And then you have a double effect. In the bad hands, it can be really hard, but with good hands, you have less pressure in the mouth and a little bit on the nose and also more stability. So when you have a rider, a beginner, but then we can speak about trainers and how to train the horse and how to work and so. But you see some riders really doing like this with their hands. That's not good for me because for the horse, it gives more instability and then you have more injuries because the mouthpiece are just doing like this or like that from one side to the other side. So you have huge pressure points. So when you have a nice noseband not tight, it will give much more stability. So normally, good trained horse, good rider, you don't need it. So I've also riders, they don't use a noseband. Yes, of course. But I have other one, they are training, they are beginners, and that's difficult to put it out. And also for the horse, it's for the wellness of the horse. It's like, yes, you know, it's two different points, but it's much more for the horse.
There's now quite some evidence-based research about the lesions in the mouth. Well, we're trying to find a way. If you talk about the bits that have, and well, I don't know how it's with you, but that's the way I learned it very, very long time ago. To put your hand to the side. Mm-hmm. Is it good to look at the mouth lesions because it doesn't matter what kind of bit is in it or how the hand of the rider is. If there are mouth lesions, it's not good.
No, it's not good.
And of course, in the evidence, they found horses that had mouth lesions without ever wearing a bit, of course. But is that a way of?
It's normally my presentation
for
tomorrow.
We'll do it tomorrow.
But you will see, and I think we almost have to have a look before we are riding and after to analyze ourselves while riding and after.
I think we had a question from the live stream chat. Yeah.
Yes, we have one. What about silicone bits? Unbroken but flexible. What is the impact?
And before we end the Q&A session, there's a lot of comments on the chat, and there's a big concern that we are talking about the equipment and we want to reach the root cause, which is the training and the hands holding the bit. So if we could comment a bit and focus a little bit on that as well to satisfy the need of reaching the root cause.
Yes, I already spoke about it. There are also the silicone from the food industry. So you have smooth one and other one, they are really hard and they are lying on other places. Or some horses doing well with this kind of bits, other not. It's, personal to the horse and rider.
No other questions? Yeah, I just wanted to add something. I think it's very important for the riders and trainers also to know that the bars are not something that is round. It's something that is very sharp. And there's a video that somebody made, and he cuts an apple in half with the bars of this. So I think many people do not realize how sharp this edge is, where their bit is sometimes on. It shouldn't be on it, but when it touches these bars, then it really is very sharp for the horse. Because we have the impression that it's rounded, but the bone is very sharp. And I think it's very important also to sensibilize people about this special feature also, and that when we take them further into hyperflexion, then this tension on the bit is more concentrated on these bars and on this very sharp edge. Right? Thank you. Jennifer? Yeah.
It's just a short remark. This is what we aim for in classical dressage. We don't want to make the action on the bar, but at the corner of the mouth, and release the jaw and the mandible, and then lift the pectoral muscle and the sternum, and just, yeah.
You talked about the headpiece, and I wanted to come back on it because I usually find, I don't know where to put it on the horse's paw, because usually the front piece is too short, and it brings it towards the ears, and I find that it's more comfortable for the horse when it's a bit backwards. So we have to change the front piece all the time because it's always too short. Can you just develop on that?
It's not only the front piece. Front piece, it was in the beginning we spoken a little bit about bridle fitting, and also classical bridle fitting is just only to have the right size of brow band, headpiece, and so on. Most of the time we have already too small headpieces, they are not long enough, and then we have a lot of problems with the new anatomic one, ergonomic, because they have a shape for the ears of the horse, and most of the time they are not long enough, so they are just pulling more pressure behind the ears of the horse. Then we have also to look at the head himself, because they have horses with a lot of muscles, light weathers from the atlas, and each horse is already different. Then we have different kind of pressure points from the headpieces in function of the shape, and also to give more freedom to the ligament nuclei. And it's also important. So some horses are better with this kind of headpiece, other horses not. So it's also different from each horses to each horses. The first point is to have a properly fitted, and then in function of the kind of headpieces, you have a huge influence on the muscles on the neck, the fascia, and also the biomechanics of the back and the hind legs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Géraldine.